This is a $100,000 Porsche GT3. It looks flawless and it could still cost you 20 grand in repairs the month after you buy it. The thing that should terrify you is that you won't be able to detect this in the listing, in the photos, and not even on the test drive. Because on these cars, the things that actually cost you money are the things you can't see. So before you spend six figures on a 997 GT3, here are the 5 things I'd verify first. You miss one of them and you're buying someone else's problem. The first thing I'd ask for is the DME over-rev report. DME stands for Digital Motor Electronics. It basically tells you what happened to this engine. It tracks the engine, it manages it, and it gives you a complete history of what happened. Engines have a specific red line, a specific number of rounds per minute, revolutions per minute. They're not allowed to exceed. If they exceed this number, it's a big problem. It wears down the engine and it's not the best thing to have on a car you're buying. How is this over-rev measured? How do you actually measure whether the car you're looking at has exceeded the red line or not? The DME. We have 6 ranges and each range tells you the RPM that the car was in. For example, range 1 was 9,000 to 9,200 RPM. All the way to range 6, over 11,000 RPM on that car. Now, these ranges are highly indicative, but they do not tell you exactly how the engine is. Range 1 to 2, engine damage is unlikely. Could still be there, but it's unlikely. Range 3, it's possible. Range 4 and 5, highly probable that you have engine damage on this car. And range 6, almost guaranteed you have engine failure on this car. It's not for sure, you still have to do an inspection, but 90% of the cases, you're gonna have engine damage. As I said, these get progressively worse. So a car in range 1 is probably better off than a car in range 6. But the thing that most people get wrong is they think if they buy a car that's in range 4, which is probable engine damage, that, it's the end of the world. They're looking at a trash can. But that's not true. Because here's the thing, the DME report doesn't just tell you what range the car was in, it also tells you how long it was in, how many combustion events happened in that range. So how much it was abused in that range. And it also tells you when the latest event happened. When was the last time it was over-revved? Now this is particularly important because if the car had an over-rev event 5 years ago and ever since then it's been working perfectly, no problems, then that's a much safer car to buy than one that had an over-rev event only a few weeks ago. So the DME isn't a red light or a green light on the car, but it does tell you if there's something to investigate. Next, we have the coolant pipes. This is one of the things I'd want checked underneath the car. The mezger engine uses coolant pipes that are press-fitted, aluminum housings, but they're held together with an adhesive, basically glue. The problem is that these repeated heat cycles that happen on any car eventually make the glue melt or decompose, and some of these connections let go. And then you start losing coolant extremely quickly because the coolant pipes are no longer attached. That's obviously bad for the engine, it's bad for the car, but imagine you're looking at a beautiful listing online. It has the perfect paint, perfect wheels, a beautiful interior, but you have no idea whether this coolant pipe problem has been addressed. Because on this specific model, it was held down with glue, but in other models, the later models, it was actually bolted together or welded. I'd want a Porsche specialist to go underneath the car and look at the actual coolant pipes and make sure a preventative measure was done, whether they were welded or bolted. That's the difference between just looking at a GT3 and actually inspecting it deeply. Now next we have track history, and I don't want you to misunderstand me. This is a GT3, it was meant to be used on the track. But track usage versus track abuse are two very different things. You do not want to buy a GT3 that has hidden track usage, because repeated track usage wears things like the brakes, the suspension, the wheel bearings, and other chassis components. So I'd want to know how was the car driven, how often was it driven on the track, and what was replaced, what wasn't replaced. Does the maintenance history actually match how the car was driven? This is very important. There are even clues that tell you whether or not this car was used aggressively on the track. Things like rubber deposits in the wells of the wheels, scraps to the underbody, aggressive wear to the brakes, and other things that show this car was prepared for the track repeatedly, a lot. Now, none of these things automatically make the car bad. They just give you information, they give you data. And the one thing I'd remember is that track history is not bad. Hidden track history is bad. The 997.2 GT3 also uses center lock wheels, and this is important because there was a recall campaign for specific cars because the center lock wheels essentially became loose over time and they can detach from the car. Now, if you don't know the difference, center lock wheels have one main central bolt that keeps the wheel attached to the car. The normal wheels have 5 lugs or 5 bolts that keep them attached. The issue with this center lock mechanism is that some cars left the factory with loose wheels, let's say, and over time they can detach or become looser. So Porsche recalled certain cars, and if I were buying one, I'd check the VIN number of the car I'm looking at against which cars needed the recall campaign. Now, this is not to say that these center lock wheels are terrible. They're not. They just needed to be tightened a little extra by Porsche. For those of you who care about the actual technical details, when these wheels left Porsche, they were around 500 Newton meters of torque, not the engine torque, the torque that actually involves the wheels being attached to the car. They were 500 Newton meters, and then in the recall, they increased it to 600 Newton meters so that they can ensure the wheels don't fall off, basically. Now, the biggest trap is not a single mechanical component. It's thinking that you can buy a GT3, a 997.2 GT3 entirely by yourself by just looking at a listing. Because the listing will tell you the paint, it will tell you the interior color, it will tell you the mileage, but it won't actually tell you anything happening underneath the car. I'd want to see the DME report. I'd want to see the service history. I'd want to put the car in a lift. I'd want to see the coolant system, whether it's been bolted or welded or not. I'd want to see the drivetrain and the chassis. I'd want to check them as well. If the car has the ceramic brakes, the PCCB, I'd want to actually check them because they're not like normal brakes. You know, normal brakes, they have a thickness. They start getting thinner, you know the brakes are wearing. But these ceramic brakes, you need to actually take them off the car, put them on a weighing scale and see how much they weigh. That's the only way to tell. So there are lots of different things. And when you're buying a six-figure car, you're not buying the photographs on a listing platform. You're buying the actual car. So it would make sense for you to check all of these things. And this is exactly why I don't look for cars that are just listed up for sale. Because when I'm finding one of these cars for one of my clients, I don't just look for the cheapest GT3. I'm looking for the right GT3. Because the last thing you want is to spend 6 figures on a really nice car from the outside, but in reality, you're buying someone else's problem. If you want one of these, the right one, without the risk, this is what I do. I find it, I verify it, I negotiate the price, and I make sure you're not buying someone else's problem. DM me on Instagram @NoorIntel and tell me exactly what you're looking for.